What's up and welcome to another video. Today we're going to create this fluted class effect and interaction. As you can see here, it can interact to mouse movement or to page scroll. I created this as a ThreeJS shader and it took me way too long to build it, but I really wanted to see if it was possible and I think the result turned out pretty good. So now I turned it into an attributes-based solution that you can use on your website completely free. So let's see how you can set this up. For this demo, I'm going to use Webflow, but you could use any platform whatsoever. You just need to have divs and attributes. For my specific layout, I'm going to use this grid, and then I'm going to create my canvases inside of the grid. First thing, I just add a div block. This will be the canvas. For my project, I'm going to use the manual positioning to place it wherever I want it in my grid. So now it takes up some space in my grid. I'm just going to give it a class. I'm going to call it canvas. And I'm also going to set the position to relative, and you'll see why in just a second. So we have a canvas container, and then we need to put an image inside. This image, to get a nice transition, I'm going to set it to absolute and to cover the entire canvas. So absolute and width and height to 100%. I'm also gonna change the fill to cover. Okay, so now the image will cover the entire canvas container. Let's just change the image out. So let's look into how we actually make this into a fluted class effect. For this, you need to head over to thelazygod.com. That's my website where you can find all of these snippets that I create, and they are completely free. The one in this video is the fluted class. So here you'll find instructions on how to add it to your page and also an example of how it will look. So the first part that you need to do is to take the snippet and put it on your page. So I'm gonna copy this, go into the page settings, and I'm going to add it into the head code. So you'll see this script has two different parts. The first part is the ThreeJS module, and the second part is my custom shader and interaction logic, which is open source and hosted on GitHub. So you can check it out if you want to. I'm going to save this, and then we can go back to the guide. So we see there are two steps in the required setup. First, we need to define the canvas containers, and then we need to define the image source elements. So we already created a div block, and it has the image inside. So then we just need to give it this attribute. We can copy it. Then we can select the canvas container and add it as a custom attribute. So that was the first part of the required setup. The second part is to define the image source elements. Inside of our canvas, we need to put an image, and that will serve as the source for the fluted class effect. So we just need to give the image this attribute. We can select the image and add the custom attribute. So now we actually have the effect set up, and we can publish and see the simplest version of this. Let's just do a quick test. Okay, so there you can actually see that the image was turned into this fluted class effect, but it's not interactive yet. And we have a few extra settings that we can change to adapt how it looks. So back into Webflow, before we change the settings, I'm just going to duplicate this canvas container. So we have a few extra on the page. So now I just duplicated the canvas container and swapped the images inside and just put them in my grid for this nice layout. One thing to notice is that since we're using WebGL, there is a limit of 16 different WebGL contexts for most browsers. That means that you can't have more than 16 of these on one page. Okay, but let's try to add some of the custom settings so we can actually make them interactive and change how they look. Going back to thelazygod.com, the first thing we see here is the interaction mode, and we have two different modes. One is the mouse movement interaction, and the other is the scrolling interaction. The way we add it to the canvas is we take this attribute and put it on the canvas container as well. So the first one here, I'm going to add the attribute, and here I'm going to say we use mouse for this one. For the second one, we could do scroll. And for the last one, let's just also do scroll. Let's just do a quick publish to see how it looks. Okay, so now you can see the first one is interactive by mouse movement, and the second one by scroll, the third one also by scroll. So there are a few things more that I want to change here. The first one, I think it looks good. The second one, I feel like the segments are a bit too small, so I want to make them bigger. We can do that with an attribute. And for the last one, let's try to rotate the segments so they're horizontal and also make the segments a bit bigger, and the motion, we can also maybe make that a bit stronger as well. Heading back to the lazy guard, we can see the optional add-ons. The first one we see here is level of motion. By default, the number is 1, and if we increase the number, we'll have more motion in our interaction. So for this last one, again on the canvas container, we can add the attribute and we can set a number. So here I'm gonna do 4. So we'll have a bit more motion on this one. Then we have the attribute for the number of segments. And again, the default is 80 here. So if I lower the number, each segment will be bigger. Or if I increase the number, each segment will be smaller. So for this last one, I'm gonna try with 60. So they'll be slightly larger. And for the second image, I'm gonna do 40. So the segments will be a bit bigger. And then we have the effect rotation, and this will rotate the direction of the segments. So by default, they are vertical, and if we do 90 degrees, they would be horizontal. So now I'm just going to rotate this one 90 degrees. Let's just publish and see what we've changed. Okay, so we didn't change the first one, but the second one, we can see now that the segments are horizontal, and they're still interacting to scroll. They're also a bit larger than before. And for this last one, the segments are just a bit bigger than before. We actually have one last attribute that we can add, which is to show a gradient overlay. So this is kind of a gradient that will be applied to each segment to give it more of a 3D feeling. So this is an attribute we can also put on the canvas container, and the number we will have to put will be the opacity of the overlay. So I'm gonna edit this last one to add the gradient overlay. I'm just gonna do 50. I'm also gonna make the segments a bit larger just so you can see it a bit more. Now we can see that each segment has this gradient overlay that gives us a slight 3D feeling. Yep. So there you have it. This is how you can create this animated fluted glass effect and interaction. If you end up using it for something, I would love to see it. So please make sure to leave a comment or tag me. Otherwise, just thanks for watching and have a nice day.